Hello you wonderful people, it's Dom here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Starfield, what was shown at the Xbox/Bethesda showcase on the 12th of June. Well, with this entire showcase as a whole, I watched it with one of my mates, and even though they only showed things which will be releasing over the next year, I'll be honest, there's a lot of things there which just I looked at and thought, yeah, nah, I'm not really too fussed about. There was one other game that looked really interesting to me called Flintlock, which had a really interesting looking combat system, and just the whole trailer itself looked really interesting and looked like something that would be really enjoyable to play, especially in like the combat side of things, as well as not really giving away too much of the story. So it's definitely something that I'm going to be looking out for and seeing what extra details they bring out about this game in the near future. But yeah, back to the main attraction. I'm mainly going to be talking about Starfield and all the things that I really liked and the things that I was a bit skeptical on. So I think the first place to start with this was that about 2 years ago, or coming up to 2 years ago now, I made a video on things I'd like to see in Starfield. And looking back, a few of those predictions were things that just don't fit the game at all, like how I wanted alien species, like a lot of them to play through. That's not really what the game's about. It's set in a quite grounded future with humans being the majority of the races around, although there is going to be a point about aliens later in the video that I will dabble on. And then other things like interesting factions and customizable spaceships that you'll get to see later in this video because they are going to be in the game. So the first thing we got to see in this trailer, other than Todd's majestic face of course, is what looks like some form of moon or kind of low terraformed planet in the middle of God knows where. But as you can see, the actual landscape is quite vast and empty. In fact, yeah, there you go. That's it. Crete, it's a moon. So, what we got to see here was really interesting, but also quite an empty-looking area. But as you can tell from the looks of it, and it being a moon, this is kind of somewhere where you'd need to have your own oxygen tanks, because you wouldn't be able to breathe properly without it. We get this kind of little cutscene of a ship landing, and I have a feeling that this is going to be the kind of thing that you see every time you land on a planet or a moon. Just a little animation like that, a mini cutscene while the game's secretly trying to load everything in. And then you see the character walk out. And at this point of the trailer, I wasn't too amazed. There was nothing really which kind of grabbed my attention. But it was an interesting start, I'll give you that. We then got to see him kind of scan a bit of the fauna on the planet, which kind of had a bit of a No Man's Sky feel. And you'll see a few more things on the trailer which do give off No Man's Sky vibes. There's also the kind of generic trailer walking down a path as some animals rush across, which you can't tell if they're friendly or not, but probably will get cut out when the actual game releases. But we won't judge them just too far yet. But yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of very interesting and diverse looking creatures, which is really nice to see, because I was worried that it was going to be a kind of game where everything would look a bit generic and you'd go to these different locations and you'd be like, hang on, this reminds me way too much of the last place I was at. But yeah, this is what you'd kind of expect for a moon, realistically. It's quite bland, quite vague, and we can also see here some of the material gathering. So they can scan it, see what the material is. It's iron, and they can take some of it, which is probably going to be used later for resources, such as the kind of crafting mechanics or base building, which has both been shown in the actual trailer. After this, we get to have a little look at how kind of combat and exploration kind of works. And one thing I was saying when I was watching this with my friend was that I'm not the biggest fan of the weapon design in this game. Obviously, it's their vision, they're allowed to do whatever they want with it, but I find all the weapons just look a bit cubic. This weapon here, the what looks like an SMG, isn't too bad a design, but when you see the actual shotgun that he pulls out later, you'll see what I mean. But the combat kind of does look very much like your kind of Fallout 4, the similar grenade kind of throwing movements to that. It did give off very much those Fallout vibes. But yeah, this shotgun here, I just looked at the design and thought it did look a bit cubic, which it's me nitpicking, to be honest. But I still think it's very cool, you know, to kind of see the combat flows quite nicely. The lockpicking system here, again, I will admit, I wasn't too, like, baffled by it. It just looked a bit mediocre. And yeah, this gun especially further continues my push on the weapons that we got to see just looked a bit blocky. And, like, the thing is, this here is clearly just a snippet from early in the game, or possibly a bit further down, but it's not too far in, as you can tell by the enemies not really doing much damage. kind of that vibe and when you show up to the first town in Fallout 4. But one thing you do get to see, which is really nice here, not only is just the combat, but also how like the jetpack works. It did look at there for a second like he kind of got very heavily hit by gravity, so unless there's a lot of gravity, my only slight concern was it looked like he kind of got hit by the top of a roof or something, or like gravity really pushing him down as soon as the jetpack stopped pushing him, which does feel a bit weird. But I don't know, maybe it was a bug, maybe it was just how it works on the planet. I don't know, time will tell. After this kind of show of combat, we are introduced to one of the main cities in the entire game, which really impressed me when I first saw New Atlantis. Just the actual visual design of it looked really impressive. The fact that it's not too small, but also not too big. And the fact that this really stands out from what we'd previously seen further goes into my point of not having these super generic assets. Almost like how Skyrim, you know, you'd show up to Morphall, you'd show up to Falkreath, you'd show up to Dawnstar, and even Winterhold, and they all had the same vibe. Here, every location that you get to see looks like it has this certain level of love to it, which is really nice to see. And even seeing the characters, like, you can kind of see that they are still the same, kind of similar designs from Fallout, but they've clearly had a bit of updated graphics. We also get a bit of talk about the story here and some mysterious artifact, which is really interesting and kind of pushes on this kind of theme of mystery and exploration into the game, and really does get me hoping that our exploration isn't just going to be to a bunch of boring and generic areas, as they have shown there's so many areas to go to, but, you know, they could just be completely empty. Another thing I do like is how you have that zoomed-in conversation like you used to in Oblivion and Fallout 3. I don't know why, just something about that really just hit with me, but I can't work out what. We then get to see a bunch of locations in a quick montage, and they do look really interesting. The fact that one looks like a kind of lower quality, kind of very populated city, and some others looking much smaller. And it is really impressive just to see the kind of variety here, and the fact that there's probably going to be so many different kind of side quests here and there, possibly even some of them being abandoned locations that weren't able to be populated properly, and areas which could be infected with different creatures on planets. There's so many possibilities here, and it's really interesting to see what they're going to do with it. After this, we were introduced to one of the factions in the game, which is causing some issues, and I do have a slight concern that this is going to turn a bit like Fallout 4, where you'll kind of progress through about half the storyline, and then it will force you to choose a faction, which basically just determines your entire end game. As much as some people might have liked that for Fallout 4, I personally get a bit weird by it. As much as it's a bit stranger, I prefer the way that Elder Scrolls has done it, where you've got these factions that you can do quests for and join, but you're not locked into just doing one, forcing multiple playthroughs. I do like the idea of being able to join them all and kind of just have a little feel around with them all and see what really fits your character best. But no, the game does look really interesting. The assets and like actual character movement looks like a heavy improvement from what we've seen in previous games, and I'm very impressed to see what they've been able to do with the engine, which is technically the same engine as Morrowind, just on a significant amount of steroids. After looking at all these really cool areas, we got our first look at character customization, which kind of clearly shows that it's just humans only, which obviously that's fine, you know, that's what the game's going to be. It'd be a bit strange if, you know, you were the only alien. But it is a really nice kind of thing to see the level that you can go into detail, like even the way you walk, the actual size of your character, the build. The background's really nice as well, because they even show that it will affect bits of dialogue in the game. Even though it's probably just the opening of the game, realistically, it's still quite nice to see it actually affect the game, you know, your early choices, and have these kind of replayability of the characters. And here, we also got to have a look at these optional traits, which are really interesting because they show these different playstyles. And one of them is alien DNA, which we don't really get to know much about, but seems very interesting. And we can see that, depending on which ones you choose, some cannot overlap. And the one that we got here, kid stuff, you can actually see your parents if you choose this, but it takes away your money. But no, as you look at these, there's a lot of these which I think will be really interesting, like how you got Neon Street Rat, which is probably an area in the game, Raised Enlightened, Raised Universal, which would be about probably religions in the game, and having a starter home. And it's really interesting to see how some of these will affect your game and definitely add to making your character unique to you, which is something I always really like to see in role-playing games, and is really promising. But yeah, there's so many of these just to look through. It's very cool, and I'm sure that having some of these which will allow you to start in certain factions is just great. We also get to see how different some of the armor and items in the game are. Whether these actually have very good armor value or not, I don't know, but we'll move on. We then also get to have a look at the skill trees, which kind of, again, looks like it more leans into what Fallout 4 had. Looks promising, but I mean, yeah, I don't know, I didn't really have much to say about that. It's also nice to see that we're going to be able to get kind of food, drink, and weapons, kind of like lab items done with it, which is quite nice to see that we can mod our weapons once again. Although this wasn't a feature I actually used too much in Fallout 4, looking back, I just picked up whatever I found and moved on. The next segment we got to look at was what I was looking forward to the most, which is base building, which I think we might be able to do pretty much anywhere on any of these planets we can visit. And when you see how far you can travel with these planets, it's going to be very cool to see the different areas you can build whatever base. And this will definitely be something that I'll be diverting a lot of my time to. Another thing that I really wanted in this game was customizable spaceships. And fortunately we have been blessed with not only customizable spaceships, but you can choose your team that go on the ship. I don't know how high quality this is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be like Fallout 4 where you just get Traveller and random other people and you can go, hello, want to join my base? Yes, no, okay, cool. Or if it's going to be actual followers like the ones that you could get in all the other games. But it's really nice to see the level of detail you can go into shipbuilding, and like even changing the colours to such a high level with like primary, secondary and tertiary colours, all from different kind of companies which will probably be giving different buffs. It's all very cool stuff. I mean, I am curious to see how many ships are going to come out which are just going to be massive cocks, but that's a story for another time, I'm sure. And yeah, I'm very happy that we got this. This is what I really wanted. And what better way to test out your new ship than on some random innocent travellers throughout the galaxy. So you can fly your ship around in first and third person, which is really nice. And it actually looks quite nice the way it's moving. It's not got a Skyrim dragon animation as many people feared back in the day. It genuinely looks quite nice the way it moves around. And like the combat in ships does look pretty good. As well as the actual kind of backgrounds in the sky where you can see the other planets. I don't know how well it's going to work with travelling between planets, but I mean, they do have a showcase later today on the day I'm recording, but sadly I can't actually watch it because I've got other stuff to do. But no, it's really nice to see this kind of dogfight in space and how well it all just flows together, and actually how the ships do get damaged from where you shoot them, as well as the different kind of looks and aesthetics in outer space where there's asteroid belts, and there's also other space stations that you can even dock onto and probably go onto, maybe getting new ship parts or other items like that. It's all really impressive, and it's stuff that definitely gets me hyped for this game. And finally, the last thing we got to see is how big the game actually is, like space-wise. How you can land in a city and then just go off to a different part of the planet wherever you want, and you can literally see that you could just drop your spaceship wherever. Although those areas are probably going to be sort of procedurally generated and a bit random, or a very specific kind of area where you can't walk too far away from your spaceship just to stop the game from completely exploding. But the fact that there's literally thousands of planets in hundreds of solar systems, and it's really impressive stuff to see. We get a final little montage over some of the locations that we had seen earlier in the trailer, and a lot of areas where hopefully there'll be plenty of side quests and other things to do. But yeah, I think as long as this game has a lot of things to do on some of these planets and allows us to build our bases pretty much wherever we want on whatever planet to get whatever resources that we might want, whether that's materials or perhaps even like some form of animal farming, whatever that could be used for. There's so many incredible looking landscapes in this game. It gives me a lot to look forward to. And if you got No Man's Sky purely just for exploration and looking around, I'm sure you'll be able to find a lot of joy in this as well. Even if from the looks of it, it might be a cutscene landing on planets, you still get to fly around and walk around. And what more could you ask for? It's a walking sim and an RPG. But yeah, in conclusion to the Starfield presentation, I was really impressed after about the first 10 seconds. The moon planet just looked a bit like a Fallout 4 DLC to me. But then when we got to see the vastness and all the different areas that we could go to, as well as the extensive level of customization, it gives me a lot to look forward to, and I'm really going to be keeping in touch with what happens with this game and see if it gets delayed again, because it was meant to come out end of this year, but it's now been moved to early 2023. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed. What did you guys like about it or dislike about the trailer? Are you looking forward to Starfield? Are you wishing it was never made so we could just get Elder Scrolls 6 sooner? I don't know, let me know in the comments. If there's different kind of characters you're trying to make in this game, is it going to be like an introvert? Is it going to be some form of massive cultist? Let me know in the comments. I just want to hear whatever the frick you guys have about this game for No Man's Skyrim. But anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed, and take care. I'll see you in the next one.